Why, hello! How are you guys doing? This is Rob of Ro2R Review. Welcome back to the channel. And today is the best day because we are once again doing a Q&A. Oh yeah, Q&A time. You guys know this is my favorite kind of video to make. I love making these videos. I love interacting with you guys and giving you shoutouts and answering your really awesome questions. Of course, I do put the call out on Twitter for questions from you guys about anything you want to ask me, and it's always pretty much all gaming related, which is fine because that's what we do here. And you guys always come out and force with great questions. I, again, got a humongous list of fantastic questions. So I grabbed a few of those. There was obviously a lot of people and a lot of questions I was not able to get to, but I actually do try not to make 10-hour-long videos, although I know it might not seem like it. That is actually my goal every time I make a video. And these Q&As are always extremely long. They're always like 30, 45 minutes long anyways, and I don't need to make a Q&A that's like an hour and a half long. That's crazy. That's what the occasional live stream is for, in my opinion. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and jump into the first couple of Twitter questions here from you guys. Again, if you do want to be a part of these conversations and of these Q&As in the future, you should most definitely follow me on Twitter. That is where I'm the most active. I'm always tweeting. I'm always interacting with you guys and talking with you guys and reacting to news. Every day I'm tweeting, so I highly recommend following me there if you want to be a part of these in the future. And with that being said, let's hop into today's first question. So the first question we're going to answer today, I'm really excited for because it actually comes from one of my in real life personal good buddies, Jason, who goes by Jackomac at the Jackomac on Twitter. So what's up, Jason? My good homie. We're always watching movies together and everything. So I love being able to give like kind of special attention to my personal friends in real life outside of the whole YouTube thing. So anyway, he asked me a fantastic question and I thought it would be a good way to start today's Q&A. And he asks me, long-term, 2+ years, what excites you the most about the gaming industry? Hardware, software, whatevs? That is an awesome question. In fact, it's so good I probably could have made just a video on this one question, but we're going to do it in the Q&A here. So Jason asks me, in the next 2+ years, what excites me most about the gaming industry? So there's two main answers I want to focus on because there's probably hundreds of things that I could list off. I would say first and foremost, kind of like you said here, Jason, is hardware. I mean, in the next 2 years, we're going to either know about some new hardware from any of the console manufacturers, or for all we even know, maybe something has even released. I mean, 2 years from now will be, what, September 2020? There's a lot that could be happening by September of 2020, you guys. I tend to think that 2020 is the first year we might see anything release from Sony or Microsoft specifically. So I think by that time, maybe we've got something, you know, we're going to be just on the cusp of a November 2020 release of a PlayStation 5 or a next Xbox or both. Or maybe 2020 is the year that we've actually at least heard confirmations, had presentations. Maybe a PlayStation 5 and a next Xbox has been announced, but they're not meant to launch until 2021, the following year. Either way, the point is, I think in the next 2-year window, we're going to have next generation new home console hardware goodness to talk about and theorize about, and maybe even to play, for all we know. I mean, anything is possible in that long of a time frame. So yeah, I'm definitely excited about the idea of new hardware. And to kind of throw Nintendo into the boat here, I think that in the next 2 years, we're not going to see or know about the next, like, successor to the Switch. Maybe we've got, like, an upgraded Switch or a Switch Mini. But as far as, like, the successor, the Switch 2, I don't think we're going to know anything concretely, but I think that there's going to be a lot of conversations and rumors and rumblings behind the scenes around the end of 2020 that lets us know, okay, maybe we can start thinking about the future beyond the Switch. I mean, by that same time in the Wii U's life, we had already heard of the Nintendo NX, and we were all talking about NX, and I was making videos about NX, and everyone was making videos about NX. So I feel like because Nintendo's in like a different sort of release structure because of when the Switch came out, I feel like by that time we're definitely going to know, or at least have rumors behind the scenes of something happening with Nintendo's new hardware. And the only other thing I want to talk about in the next 2+ years, honestly, is Metroid Prime 4. Because between now and 2 years from now, Metroid Prime 4 will absolutely 100% have released, and I will have been playing it, and I will have maybe played it and beaten it, and I'm just so jealous of that future version of myself that's actually played a 4th Metroid Prime next-generation console Metroid game on the freaking Switch. I mean, I just am like over the moon thinking about how cool that's going to be. So you know, just to make a quick answer here to your question, Jason, those are the things I'm most excited about. New hardware in the next 2 years, and of course, Metroid Prime 4. Okay, today's second question from Twitter actually comes from another good buddy of mine, but this is a fellow YouTuber and fellow content creator, and he asked me a really fun question, so I think especially for other YouTubers or up-and-coming YouTubers, you might find this question a little bit interesting. So, comes from my man Smash JT. I'm sure you guys know of him. Please check out his channel. It's a really awesome show, and he puts together some great content. So anyway, Smash asks me, do you have a subscriber goal set, aspirations for channel size, or any milestones you are really looking forward to, or are you just playing it all by ear? So yeah, kind of asking about what I'm doing with Rule of Two Review and my goal and aspirations for the channel. So thanks so much, Smash. I super appreciate the question, buddy. So I guess, you know, for the longest time, a lot of you guys who've been around Rule of Two Review for a while, you know, my big goal was to hit 10,000. Once I cracked 5,000 like 2 years ago or a year and a half ago, I was like, man, I never even thought I would make it to 5,000. And at that point, I was like, I'm going to jump my goal all the way up to 10. What's it like to hit that 10,000 subscriber mark? I want to hit the double digits, thousands, you know? And so that was my big goal, and only last month I finally did it. Thanks to some great shout-outs and stuff from some fellow YouTubers and friends of mine, but also thanks to you guys, you know, being so into what I'm doing here with the channel. And I'm a slow-moving channel, man. I'm just about to hit my 5-year anniversary on YouTube next month in October. So, you know, whereas some people can hit 10,000 subscribers in the first 3 months of their channel, I didn't hit that viral period. I started as a gaming and a Nintendo focused channel when the Wii U was new. I mean, actually, my first video came out, I want to say 2 weeks before the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One launched, because I remember my first video was about the 8th generation, the next generation, you know, the Wii U's out and I love it. And then now Sony and Microsoft are getting ready to throw their hat into the 8th generation ring. And it was literally like the third video I ever made for the channel was about the launch of the PS4 and the Xbox One. So I've been around for a while, and so hey, I'm a slow-moving channel. It took me that long to cross 10,000 subscribers. But I've always had an upward climb, and to me, every time I've hit a new, you know, 100, 500, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 5,000, it always felt incredible. I always took those milestones to heart, and it always felt great, because I'm just a small, humble guy here with this humble little channel. But I have a great following, and I get awesome views for the size of my channel. And that is something I'm also really proud of. So I thank you guys for even being interested in watching the video. So anyway, I'm just kind of rambling here. The point is, I was always excited to hit 10,000, and now that I've finally done it, it's the most incredible thing ever. I'm in a weird place because, you know, a couple years ago when I thought maybe I wanted to try to do YouTube full-time, and I wanted to have it be this money-making thing that became my income, and I could quit my job and my career. It really wasn't a career a couple of years ago. Recently, it has become one. But I was like, you know, hey, maybe I can do this full-time and I can become a YouTuber, and then you can make more and more money, and then my job is just talking about video games. That would be great. But over the last few years, in my personal life and in my real-life job and career, it's been doing so well. It's been taking off. I make really good money for what my goals are, at least in life. I make good money, and we're even now getting ready to buy a house, you know? And like, that's the kind of thing that makes me feel like, you know, I've got really good security with a job I love, that pays me well, gives me a lot of flexibility. I can work from home. I can work in the office. I'm expected to make even more money, hopefully, over the next year or two. I've got my benefits and insurance taken care of. I don't have to do that myself. Filing my taxes is easy. All these things that maybe you don't really think about when you're like, I want to become a YouTuber, but then you realize you have to make it a business, and you've got to pay your taxes, and you have to pay for your own insurance, and paying for your own business insurance is way more expensive than paying it through your company or your employer, whoever that is, which is already expensive because healthcare and insurance is just ridiculously expensive, at least in the States. And so, I know I'm still rambling about this whole thing, but the point is, I ultimately decided right now, I love what I'm doing for my career. YouTube and Rule of Two Review, it's a side thing, it's a hobby. I do this for fun. This is an outlet for me to have a reason to talk about my favorite topics in gaming, you know, and to talk with you guys about it and interact with fellow YouTubers. So most people have the goal of making it their job and their career, and I think that's great. I support that 100%. I want everyone to have 1 million subscribers and make a living off of YouTube. That's my wish for everybody. For me, it's no longer a goal like it was 3 years ago. I just like doing it, so every new 1,000 or couple hundred, everything I make. It feels great, and I do want to continue to grow, but I don't need to do it. I'm pretty happy with where Rule of 2 Review is. And so basically the last thing you even say, Smash, is if I'm playing it by ear. And that is kind of what I'm doing, you know. I've said I'm not going to set up a Patreon because to me, whatever money I can make from Google AdSense with no effort and by asking nothing from you guys as viewers is fine for me. And I feel like, I don't know, 10,000 subscribers, man, I love it. If I hit 20,000, great. If I hit 50,000, great. Clearly, I'm never going to go viral. I think it's way too late for me to go viral and have a huge surge. And while that makes me sad because I feel like my conversations are really great, it is what it is, man. Like I said, I'm not doing it for the money, you know, like I thought I might be a couple of years ago. So this has been a very long answer, but I appreciate the question, Smash. Hopefully you guys stuck with me through all this rambling about this. But that's how I feel, man. I'm just playing it by ear, and I'm just proud to be over 10,000 subscribers. Okay, now let's get into the good stuff. Let's get into the rest of the questions, more from you guys, the viewers and the followers and stuff. So, first question is a big one. Very exciting. This comes from Zoidrin, at Zoidrin on Twitter. I hope I said that right, if the X is supposed to be a Z. Either way, this is what Zoidrin asks me. Considering that Prime 4 was teased before Luigi's Mansion 3 was shown, do you think that Prime 4's development started before Luigi's Mansion 3? You'd think that Luigi's Mansion would have been shown at E3 2017 instead of Metroid Prime 4 if that wasn't the case. And then he or she goes on to say, furthermore, if Prime 4's development started before Luigi's Mansion 3, we might still see Prime 4 before the end of the year. Whew, okay, there's a lot going on there. Awesome questions, so thank you so much for all of those questions. We're talking about Metroid, of course that's going to come up a couple of times today. And this is a great question. It's a very good point that I didn't consider until I read this. We saw Metroid Prime 4 teased over a year before Luigi's Mansion 3, but now we've seen Luigi's Mansion 3 and that has gameplay. Metroid Prime 4 has been dark ever since we saw just the logo, and we don't know anything else about it. So does that mean that Prime 4 was started before Luigi's Mansion 3, or because Luigi's Mansion 3 has now shown footage, and we haven't heard from Metroid Prime 4? Was Luigi's Mansion 3 actually the game that was started before Metroid Prime 4? And if not, does that mean that Metroid Prime 4 is going to be shown before the end of the year? Whew! There we go. That's a lot of stuff to pick apart. So, at the end of the day, I tend to think that there's kind of a combination of things that are true. I'm willing to bet that I think that Luigi's Mansion 3 probably was started before Metroid Prime 4. There were theories for a long time that Metroid Prime 4 was actually pretty far in development, but Nintendo just wanted to tease the logo, and that's why a lot of folks thought that we were probably going to see Metroid Prime 4 pretty soon, sometime released this year. It was going to be a big game for 2018, and Nintendo was just playing coy at E3 last year by teasing us with just a logo. I never really believed that, and I'm tending to think that that's correct now that we're obviously not getting the game and we haven't seen it a year and a half later. So I feel like Metroid Prime 4 was started right around the time of E3 last year. But, like is pointed out here in this question, Luigi's Mansion 3 we didn't know anything about until a couple of weeks ago at the Nintendo Direct, but they did have footage to show us, and they did give us a release year of 2019. And so that really makes me feel like, yeah, Luigi's Mansion 3 was probably started before Metroid Prime 4 and is definitely closer to releasing than Metroid Prime 4. There is the chance that Metroid just takes a lot longer to develop. Luigi's Mansion 3 is obviously a simpler game and they're building off the formula of the first two. So maybe they could have started Luigi's Mansion 3 after Prime 4, but still be able to complete the game before Prime 4 concludes. That is also entirely possible. I'm tending to believe that it was more that they started Luigi's Mansion, then they started Metroid, now they're ready to show Luigi's Mansion, and then soon they'll be ready to show Metroid, and they're going to release in that order as well. But we also can't forget that sometimes Nintendo gives us a release year, and they don't stick to that release year. Look at Fire Emblem. That was told to be a 2018 game, and then they delayed it to 2019. How many times was Zelda delayed? It was a 2014 game, a 2015 game, a 2016 game, and a 2017 game. It had release years of all of those. Well, actually, not 2014. It was just revealed in 2014. So, anyway, I ultimately think that it was Luigi's Mansion and then Metroid, and that's what happened. And I think we're going to get Luigi's Mansion 3 before we get Metroid Prime 4. And so the last part here, do you think we're going to see Prime 4 before the end of the year? I still kind of want to believe that, yeah, there's a couple of opportunities before the year is over where I think Nintendo may still reveal footage and gameplay of Metroid Prime 4 before giving us the blowout in 2019 early in the year. And I've said that before, and I'm still sticking to it. So far, that's what I feel about it. Next question on Twitter comes from George Woods at GeorgeWoods3. And George asks me, many titles are showing up at retail that might have been less likely in the past, such as Banner Saga, Undertale, etc. With retail booming in the US, do you think people are more open to buying physical games? Now, I love this question because, as a lot of you might know, I am a physical games guy. I don't really care about downloading stuff. I don't like digital files for my games or my movies or my music. I prefer as many hard copies of my media as possible. That's just how I am. Consider me old-fashioned. I don't care if you disagree. That's just how I roll. And so this is a good question because George is kind of talking about the fact that there seems to be more physical releases of like weird smaller titles coming, and people seem to be into buying them. And so he's asking, is there a retail boom when it comes to physical copies of games happening in the US right now? And I'm very happy to say that my personal opinion and feeling is that, yeah, I think that is happening, and it makes me so happy to see. How many of these weird one-off indie games are getting physical copies like Axiom Verge or Dead Cells? He talks about here Banner Saga and Undertale. I mean, that's awesome, and there's many, many others. I think Shovel Knight, and there's 100 other games. You know, we're getting physical releases of indie games, and they're selling. They're releasing them because they know that there's a market. Unfortunately, the indie scene, when we talk specifically about indies, there's some elements that aren't figured out there because in a lot of cases we're getting the digital game released first on the eShop or the PSN or Xbox Live, whatever, and then we don't get the physical in many cases until much, much, much later. Hell, Yooka-Laylee came out last year and they're only just getting ready to release a physical copy of frickin' Yooka-Laylee, which is actually a pretty good game, by the way. And so there is that kind of problem, but when we get physical games releasing as close to day and date with digital as possible with these indie games, it's great. They're doing it because they know people are buying them, and that means, much to my surprise, people seem to be more into physical copies of games than I think we initially thought, and that the industry and developers initially thought. So I'm really happy to see it. I do think there's a retail boom, and I think that means that there's more life in physical copies of games than I thought. Hopefully, instead of in 10 years they're going to go away, maybe it's in 20 or 30 years they can still last before we finally go all digital. Because eventually, yes, that will happen. I hope to be a very old man by the time that happens. And so I think it's just nothing but a good sign. Next question on Twitter comes from Vigelis Carpetus at Greek Hillian. What is up, buddy? Thank you so much for asking a good question today. And he asks me, do you agree that 2019 shapes up to be an extremely powerful year for the Nintendo Switch? Fire Emblem, Pokemon, Yoshi, Luigi's Mansion 3, Metroid Prime 4, hopefully, Animal Crossing, and who knows what else. Wow! Yeah, so dude, I am totally with you, man. 2019 is going to be incredible. I believe Metroid Prime 4 will be 2019. Yes, there's a slight chance it becomes 2020, and so let's be prepared for that. But I'm going to right now stick to the fact that I think it's going to be a 2019 game. And like you said, Pokemon, Yoshi, Luigi's Mansion 3, Animal Crossing now coming in 2019, Fire Emblem now coming in 2019. Let us not forget games like Bayonetta 3, and a small game I'm excited for, No More Heroes, Travis Strikes Again. 2019 is going to be a slam bang of a year for the Nintendo Switch. And there's another element that you didn't even mention here that I think is important to remind you guys. I also think it'll end up being the best third-party year for the Switch we've seen yet. The reason I say this, I think it's kind of clear because year one for the Switch started off incredibly. An amazing year from a first-party standpoint, so many great Nintendo and exclusive games. And then by the end of 2017, we were also seeing a lot of great, high-quality third-party content. And it painted a very positive view of the future for Nintendo as far as third-party stuff. 2018 has turned out to be a slower year. Across the board, not as many great games. A couple of Nintendo games, in my opinion, none of them have been very great. Mario Tennis is one of the most disappointing games I've ever played, and I regret paying any money for it personally, guys. No offense if you're a fan, it does not work for me. I am not a fan. Didn't pick up Kirby, and you know, now we're waiting for Pokemon, which I won't play, and then of course Smash is going to be amazing. Also, we've seen a couple of great third-party games. Dark Souls is coming. Of course, Project Octopath. Dead Cells is one of my favorite games ever. There's been some great indie and third-party titles throughout the year as well, but not as many. Not as many big, heavy hitters. Wolfenstein was probably the highest profile of them all. And it is a good game, and it is a really solid port, so that's great. But across the board, 2018 has been slow, and that's been definitely a shame. And some people are worried about the future because of it. I, however, am not. I believe a slow 2018, both from a first-party and a third-party standpoint, means 2019 is going to be insane. It's going to be a volcanic eruption of awesomeness on the Nintendo Switch. And that's evidenced already by the first-party lineup we already know about. Again, Fire Emblem, Pokemon, Yoshi, Luigi's Mansion, Animal Crossing. I think Metroid and Bayonetta can be thrown in there as well. There's so much crazy exclusive and first-party stuff already coming. It's going to come close to matching what happened in 2017 for the Switch. And then, when you think about third parties, I feel like they kind of slowed down. They took a year off in 2018 because I think they're preparing the next really big games for the Switch in 2019. Heck, we already know about Doom Eternal. That's a huge one we know is coming next year, unless the game gets delayed. But right now, if it sticks to 2019, day and date, Bethesda said it's a day and date game for the Switch, as of right now at least. And if they stick to that, then that's another huge game. And I think that's when we're going to see more stuff from Bethesda. That's when we're going to see the Rockstar games start to show up. That's when we're going to start to see even more from Ubisoft. Maybe EA pulls their heads out of their asses and finally starts doing better things on the Switch as well. And I think that 2019 is the year we start to see a lot of that stuff happen. So, long story not short at all, I am with you. I think 2019 is going to be killer for the Switch. Next question comes from Brian at BrianJedi82, one of my most active followers on Twitter. What is up, buddy? Thank you so much for asking a question. I always appreciate you tweeting at me and interacting with me on Twitter and stuff. And he asks me a very simple question. What did you think of Hollow Knight? So this was a big deal because I was always excited to pick it up. It's a Metroidvania kind of game that had great reviews and everyone loved it, and everyone was always telling me to play this game because I'm a Metroid guy and a Metroidvania guy. And after playing Dead Cells, I was like, I need something more to kind of scratch this itch. And then Hollow Knight went on sale, and I picked it up. And a lot of people on Twitter were very happy to see that I finally picked it up. So he's asking me, what did I think of it? Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing I'm going to say. Overall, the game really is incredible. I've only put probably 5 or 6 hours into the game, and I'm just guessing. I mean, it might be more, might be less, but somewhere in the range of 5 hours. I've not beaten it. I've not played it all the way through. It's an incredible game that has not gotten its hooks in me, you guys. I love what it's doing. I love the visual style. I love the atmosphere and the music. I love even the gameplay. But there's something about it that isn't really grabbing me, and there's 2 reasons I can think of why. The first is, while I love the graphics and the tone and the visual style, what I've played, all of the areas I've discovered so far, it's all very similar. And the fact that it's all dark, it's all using, I mean, I'm colorblind, like little blue and black hues, whatever the kind of color palette tone that the game is using, that is so consistent in every area I've been to. It's a little disappointing. And I haven't seen any footage of the game. I've seen a lot of footage of it. I haven't seen anything that shows anything different than that. And so I will say that visually, it's kind of a little bit draining to just be in the same atmosphere with the same color palette everywhere I go. The lack of variety of locations and color palette and visuals is a little disappointing. It's not that it isn't beautiful, it's just I want more variety, and I haven't seen any hints of that in what I've played or what I've seen from videos. The other reason it hasn't gotten its hooks in me is because I played it after Dead Cells, and I mean, Dead Cells to me is a freaking masterpiece. I love it way more than I expected to, and I think they're both trying to achieve the same kind of gameplay, but Dead Cells does it 1,000 times better, it's 1,000 times more fun, and there's way more variety to it. Now, to be fair, it's because the games are doing some things very differently, and I shouldn't hold one game to another game's standard when they're not trying to do things identically. But at the end of the day, they are both Metroidvania kinds of experiences, and they're both incredible, they're both beautiful, but I think Dead Cells was so good that it's sort of lessened the impact of Hollow Knight once I started it. So I will get back to it and I will complete it because it is a very good game. But it didn't get its hooks in me yet, and now I'm playing other games like Spider-Man and Tomb Raider, and you know, Dark Souls is coming out soon, so I'm going to be distracted for a while. But eventually, before the end of time, I'll get back to Hollow Knight because it is a good game. Next question comes to us from JSear at JSear on Twitter. And Jace asks me, do you believe Mario Kart 8 will stay the main entry for this console generation and get new plus old courses and characters via DLC? I mean, it received Labo updates in the not too distant past, so it's not that unlikely, right? That is actually a really, really good question. Will Mario Kart 8 be the only Mario Kart we get on the Switch? Or will we get Mario Kart 9 or the next Mario Kart, whatever that's supposed to be, on the Switch? Or is it going to be for the next generation, the successor to the Switch? Great question. And I think that, to me, the answer depends on one thing. How long will the Switch last? If the Switch is meant to go 6, 7, 10 years, like Kimishima has kind of sort of said in the past, if the Switch, this version, is meant to go that long, then for sure we're going to get a new Mario Kart. Mario Kart 9 or the next Mario Kart, whatever it is, we will definitely see it on the Switch if that's the case. Now, here's the thing. I don't personally believe the Switch is going to last that long, you guys. I know some people have criticized me for thinking that in the past because of what Kimishima said, but personally, I don't see the Switch lasting more than 5 years. I mean, maybe 6 years is the max. That's what I'll say. 6 years is the max here for the Switch. That's just my personal guess and theory. Could even be shorter than that, but let's stick with 5 to 6 years. That's how long I think the console is going to last, and because of that, I think Nintendo would be crazy to release Mario Kart 9 on the Switch when they could instead launch the next console with a Mario Kart 9. I mean, look at what they did with just a remaster of Mario Kart 8 on the Switch in the first 2 months of the console's life, and it did incredible numbers. Imagine it being a brand new Mario Kart launching a new console. It's going to do even better. And I think that Nintendo has learned over the last couple of generations, you gotta launch with at least one, if not two, killer app titles for your console. Whether it's launch day or if it's in the launch window of the first 2 or 3 months, you gotta have a game or two to support that console. It helped big time with most of their biggest consoles, and they know that they have to do it again. And so there's no way that if the Switch is going to go for 10 years, they're not going to wait 10 years to do an next Mario Kart. They'll release it on the Switch. But if the Switch is only going for 4 or 5 years, maybe 6 years, I feel like they'll be smart and postpone the game and make it a launch for the next Nintendo console. The one thing that kind of works in your favor here, Jace, is the idea that maybe Nintendo honestly wouldn't care about doing another multi-generational release. Maybe they're going to be willing to make Mario Kart 9 a 2020 Switch game, and then if the next Switch comes out in 2022, that's when they'll be like, hey, let's just make a Mario Kart 9 Deluxe for the next Switch console or the next Nintendo. And maybe they're just willing to do the Mario Kart 8 thing again. And that would probably be smart for business because it obviously worked here big time. But I gotta say, I would be pretty disappointed if they did that. I mean, the Switch was in a unique situation to take a lot of games from the Wii U and bring them over to the console because not a lot of people played them on the Wii U, and that's fine. The Switch is not the Wii U. It's a big hit, and most people have played Mario Kart 8 now between the two consoles, and they will have played most of the games that come out on the Switch. So when the next console comes out, I don't think they can get away with doing a Metroid Prime 4 Deluxe, and a Breath of the Wild Deluxe, and a Xenoblade 2 Deluxe, and a whatever Deluxe for the next console. They can't do it again. And so I don't want them to do it with Mario Kart. So ultimately, that's kind of how I feel about that. Okay, the next set of questions is really exciting, and there is a lot of questions from the same person. So I'm going to read 2 tweets and kind of go through them here. So all of these questions and tweets comes from Monkeyface at Rebel Rose Rage. So thank you so much for asking these questions. And let's get into her first set from her first tweet. She says, we're all aware of your love of Metroid, but with so many similar games out there, is there any you feel that has captured the essence? What is your ideal game? With the indie scene growing, do you think the industry is starting to take smaller development teams more seriously? So that's her first set of questions, and I really, really appreciate all those. Let's kind of jump into these. So when discussing my love of Metroid, which you are correct, what are the similar games out there that really capture the essence is what she asks me. There's quite a few that jump to mind that I recommend everyone play if you're a Metroid fan and you haven't played them. Ori and the Blind Forest is probably at the very, very top of that list. That is an incredible game. Xbox and PC exclusive, and the sequel's coming out sometime soon. The sequel's weirdly disappeared. I don't know if anyone's noticed that, but Ori and the Will of the Wisps has basically gone the way of the dodo. I don't know where that game is. So, either way, Ori and the Blind Forest is absolutely amazing. Dead Cells, the game I was just talking about, a current game, incredible. Everyone has to play it. Axiom Verge, which released on the PlayStation 4, the Wii U, and now the Nintendo Switch, is an amazing throwback to kind of that 2D Castlevania, Metroidvania kind of feel. And then I'm going to say all of the 2D Castlevania games. Going back to from Symphony of the Night on, all of the amazing Game Boy Advance and 3DS Castlevania games. Those games are incredible. Dawn of Sorrow, mwah, that game is amazing. I mean, that's just like my favorite Metroidvania game. It's so, so good. And of course, Symphony of the Night and all those other games. So those are games I recommend people play. She then asks, what's my ideal game? That's a pretty vague question, but I'll tell you one of my favorite things in any video game that I play, that I look for and that I love in any game. And it is atmosphere. I like atmosphere, and I like big open vistas. I love like what Skyrim does, or Breath of the Wild does, where you can just be somewhere and you can just see way off in the distance, and you get this inkling that the world is huge. And you see trees, or you see castles, or you see houses and villages, or you see mountains. And in games like Breath of the Wild or Skyrim, where you can go to those places, it's even better. I mean, that's the best thing. And so I really love that, and I also love it when those games are kind of quiet experience that let you pick the tone and the pace. And again, great examples are Breath of the Wild and Skyrim. They're the perfect examples for this. Also, because I love scary games, I like games that create an atmosphere in a scary environment. So Silent Hill and The Last of Us are games that accomplish that as well. And those are my favorite things. I just like atmosphere. I don't necessarily love games that have all the big sound effects and music, you know, just booming music that kind of just is always kind of coming at you wherever you are, whenever you're playing. That's not for me. Most people love it, but I just like the atmosphere. I like atmospheric sound effects, like the wind, maybe some piano flourishes or whatever, but like wind and crickets chirping and birds and those kinds of things, the grass being blown around. That's the kind of stuff I like. I don't really like big sweeping scores of music playing all the time. I like to feel like I'm traversing a world in my game. So that's that. She then asks, with the indie scene growing, do I think the industry is starting to take smaller development teams more seriously? Absolutely. That's unquestionable. There is no doubt that that's what's happening. And, you know, I've talked so much about how I'm not big on indie games for a couple of reasons. Not because they're not good, just because I don't have time to fill myself with these small, bite-sized downloadable games. I'm just too busy. I go from big game to big game to big game, usually. But the indie game scene, over the course of the last 5, 7 years, 10 years maybe, has done so much for gaming, and so much for small up-and-coming developers, and so much for the creativity of games that, yeah, the industry is clearly taking them seriously. Even early in this video, I talked about how now they're getting physical releases, and people are running out there to buy them in droves. That's an example right there that the industry and the consumer is taking indie games very seriously. The next question she asks me is, was there ever a moment where you gave up gaming? If so, what brought you back? I recently came to realize I spent the entirety of my relationship with my guy not knowing I was a gamer. With working in school, grad school, full-time, I spent 4 to 6 years not playing anything, and now I play often. So that's a really, really great question. I love this. This is a little bit more personal and a little bit more about how we kind of think of ourselves in our real life compared to our gaming hobby. And so she's asking me, you know, you're saying you went through a period where you and your boyfriend or husband or whatever, you guys didn't really do a lot of gaming, and then you realized, I am a gamer, and then you got into gaming even though you're like a full-time student and doing the whole real life thing. And I totally can relate to that problem, man. It's hard to do real-life full-time adulting and then also try to be like a serious gamer on like on a pretty regular schedule. I struggle with that all the time. And so she asks if there was ever a period where I gave up gaming, and if so, what brought me back? So I've kind of told this story in a different context before. I never really stopped gaming or gave up gaming ever since I was a kid. But there was a period where there was like a lull, and I guess it slowed down. And it was in my, I guess I want to say late teens and like early to mid 20s. I was still gaming, and I still was like buying some games and stuff. And for me, this was during the N64 and the PlayStation 1 area, going into the PS2 and GameCube era. Is kind of this period of my life that I'm talking about, when I was, you know, 19, 20, 21 years old. And at that time, you know, you're becoming so independent and you're becoming more social with people. You know, this was the time I turned 21. This was in the years of after I'd moved out from my parents' house, and I was living with roommates in apartments and trying to begin making my own life, you know, trying to get girlfriends and do that whole kind of thing, you know, during my single periods throughout these years. And you just think about stuff differently. And so I was less focused on just always being into the gaming community. The internet wasn't keeping the gaming community alive like it is nowadays. And so I had a 64 and I had a Dreamcast, and it was all great, and I loved it, and we played it, and, you know, me and my friends, we'd get together and play video games, but I was also just focused on hanging out and partying, and like I said, trying to meet girls and do that whole kind of thing. But around the time that the GameCube launched, I was really excited for the GameCube. Even though I was like kind of becoming more of a casual gamer and not a serious gamer throughout these years, I was really excited about the GameCube. And when I finally got myself a GameCube, I was living in my second apartment at the time. I was in Denver. I got the GameCube, and something about the GameCube just shook me to my core in a good way and made me realize, yo, dude, gaming got really cool really quickly, because I loved the 64. I still love it. But when I went from 64 to GameCube, and then I even saw PS2 and Xbox, what they were doing, I was like, this is badass. Like, this is a whole new level of technology. Gaming has, like, gotten cool. It's gotten a little bit more adult and mature. Like, it's growing up with me. I'm a late teens, early 20s guy. I'm all about hanging out and partying, having drinks, smoking pot with my friends, doing all that stuff. But I'm also able to play these really badass games on my GameCube and my PS2, and they're like mature and they're awesome. And at that time, that mattered to me. And there was something about the GameCube in that era that basically just made me realize how much I've always loved gaming, and gaming had always been with me. I never let gaming go, and it never let me go. And that's when I made myself, you know, eventually get hired at GameStop. And all of a sudden I had a job in the game industry working for a games retailer, and that was a great 3 years of my life. They sent me to E3 in 2004 even, and it basically just, that whole era, the release of the GameCube and that 6th generation brought me back into the fold as a serious hardcore gamer, and made me realize I actually never let gaming go. And that's one of the reasons that both the 64 and the GameCube are my two favorite consoles of all time. Okay, awesome questions so far. Really appreciate everything you guys have to say. And those were great questions I just answered. So let's get into the last two questions for today. Next one comes from Juan in a Million at JIM Official. What is up, buddy? Juan is a good buddy of mine. I know you've got a really awesome YouTube channel over there as well. So he asked me, it's kind of a funny thing. He says, how's the progress in that Rule of Two review podcast? Don't think I forgot about it. So he's kind of jabbing me a little bit here, because I did say many, many months ago that I was planning on starting my own podcast, and it was going to be me with a rotating guest, you know, plenty of other well-known YouTubers and stuff you guys know, also some small YouTubers to give them exposure, maybe the occasional fan, maybe some real-life friends. Who knows? I was really excited to do it. But here's the thing that's prevented it so far, and it's probably always going to prevent it, unfortunately, is I am too busy. I am a busy dude, you guys. Rule of Two review and video games in general. I guess I'm different than a lot of other serious YouTubers out there where this isn't my main thing. This is just something I do, like I already said, on the side for fun. You know, I come in here a couple of times a week, I record a video, I play games on my little bit of downtime after work, you know, and a little bit on the weekends. And that's it. And so to organize a podcast, to do it regularly on the same day and time every week, which is the only way to be successful at it, like the Spawncast is a great example of that. That I just wouldn't be able to do it, you know, and it just, I want to do it, and I could just do them sporadically, but the problem is I don't think it would take off the way it's meant to. I know if I could do it on a regular basis, it would probably take off. I think it would become an incredible podcast, you guys. And so maybe in the next 6 months, maybe after we buy our house and move in and get settled, maybe then I might consider doing it if I can work it into my schedule. But don't forget, I play in a band too. It's like I do work, I got a serious relationship, I play in a band, and then, oh yeah, I have this video thing I do on YouTube every once in a while. Like, it's hard for me to do a regular podcast. So far, it's on the very, 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 very back burner. And let's get into the last question for today. I can see the red light on my camera blinking, so I think I'm close to running out of battery. So let's see if we can wrap this up in one final take and get this question done and end this video. So this comes from Traykov540 at Traykov540, and he asks me, do you expect Metroid Prime 4 to be shown at the Game Awards similar to Zelda? Also, now that the Switch Online is out, has your opinion changed? So, asking about Prime 4, asking about Switch Online. So do I think we could see Metroid Prime 4 at the Game Awards? Yes, I do think that that is a possibility. I made a video about this a few weeks ago, and I've been sticking to it. I think that there is a chance, while we still have 3.5 months to go before the year is over, that in 2018, Nintendo might actually show us Metroid for the first time. Show us gameplay, show us a trailer, give us an idea of the look and feel of the game. Not a blowout, but just a visual look. This is what it looks like. I wanted to believe it would happen in a Nintendo Direct. I do think we've now seen the last Nintendo Direct for the year. So, in my opinion, the most likely chance for us to see it before the year is over is at the Game Awards. Nintendo has been great about bringing surprises. I think that they're always going to bring a surprise every year going forward now. I think they've realized it's stupid not to do that and have a showing there. And they already showed Bayonetta 3 last year. They could show Bayonetta 3 again, but I think they want to surprise people, and Prime 4 is that perfect surprise. And then, of course, he asks about the Switch Online, and now that it's out, has my opinion changed? And here's the thing. The Switch Online has only been out for a couple of days as of this recording. I didn't even sign up for it until a few days after it launched so that I could play the Dark Souls beta test, the network test. And so, has my opinion changed? It's tough for me to say because even though I made like a 20-minute video on my final thoughts of the online service, that was more about just the reaction and conversation happening around it. I don't have the strongest of opinion about the online service, guys. I just don't. And I know that might seem crazy to some people, but, you know, I really just am not that worried about it overall. And so I would say that no, my opinion hasn't changed. Mostly because A, I haven't used it much, and B, because I never had a strong opinion in the first place. I've made it known there are problems. Nintendo is missing the boat on a lot of ideas here. They're definitely not doing a lot of the right things. There are mistakes, and there are things that I think they should be doing better for a paid service, even if that service is only $20. So people who are mad, I think, have a right to be mad. I recommend not being shitty about how you're mad. You know, make your voice heard in a positive way that affects change. Don't just be a raving, swearing lunatic on the internet, but of course that's how the internet works, so. But you're still not wrong to be mad. I agree with the reasons people are angry. That being said, I'm not worried about paying 20 bucks to be able to play games online and to have access to the NES Classic games. Like, that is worth the $20 value in my opinion. So while yes, there are things they need to do better, at the same time, the way I put a value on my $20 that I work for and that comes out of my bank account, online play and NES games are worth it. In a world where I'm also paying 60 bucks a year to have PSN and Xbox Live. I'm getting ripped off by those guys, so what does it mean to pay 20 bucks to Nintendo to play online, to do the same thing I do for Sony and Microsoft? Like, it's fine. And so that's why I say I don't have a strong opinion about it really, even though I know most of you guys do. So I would say that no, my opinion is the same, and it's probably always going to be the same. And so that is it. That was today's Q&A. Man, so many good questions. I'm glad I didn't pick more because I knew some of these I would have very long answers to, and boy was I right. I know I had some long answers to stuff today, guys, but I hope that you enjoyed this. Again, I love answering questions. I love giving you shout-outs. I am very thankful that every time I ask for Q&A questions, you guys come out in force with so many great ones, and it's hard for me to whittle them down, and there's always so many questions I hate leaving out, but I gotta do it. You gotta sometimes cut things even if you don't really want to. So, you know, one more time, please feel free to follow me on Twitter if you want to be involved in these in the future and to just chat and interact with me on a regular basis anyways. And thank you to all who asked questions. Thank you to all whose questions I answered today. And that is going to be it from me. So thanks, of course, as always, for tuning in, guys. This is Rob of Ro2R, and I'll catch you next time on another video.